So this is going to be my first video on TEK Performance, a new YouTube channel I'm starting. I am going to film my business and what I do. I normally specialize in Gen 3 and Gen 4 LS, doing cam swaps and stuff like that on like majority of them's 9906 Silverados. I've been working on those a whole bunch, but today my first video is going to be something different. I am working on a 1969 C10 and it has a small block in it. So that's a little bit different. The motor just got freshly rebuilt. It's a 355. It's bored 30, comp cam, Keith Black flat top pistons. Completely fresh engine. It's got 400 miles on it. The customer brought it in. It's burning oil. About every 30 or 40 miles, it'll drink the whole oil pan. I've done some tests on it already. I've done a compression test. Also, the 7 cylinders had 150 pounds and one cylinder had 135, but the cylinder that had 135 had the least amount of oil on the spark plug. The rest of the cylinders had tons of oil on the spark plug, tons of oil getting into the combustion chamber. It's smoking out, it's true dual exhaust and it's smoking out both sides. So I've done the compression test, I've tested the PVC valve, I've tested all the basic stuff. I think now the next step will be is to pull the heads off and see if there's a valve seal issue or one of the valve guides. It has a 180cc Flowtech heads on it. These heads are known for having issues with the valve guides and the valve seals, so I'm going to pull those off, get the springs off of them, look into that, and make sure that's okay. If I don't see a problem with the heads, then it's going to have to be the rings. As much oil as this is burning, I don't think it's on all 8 cylinders, so it's not likely to be a intake gasket on the bottom. It's more than likely to be there's oil running down the valve seals, or there is a ring problem where they haven't been broke in, or it is bored 30. It could possibly have 20 thousandths pistons in it. Who knows? It's burning oil very badly, but it does have good compression, so it's kind of leading me away from the rings. But I know the oil ring could still have a problem, but I think the next step will be to get the heads off and look into those. So I'm going to start a time elapse and y'all can watch me work on that.
So I went ahead and got both valve covers off of it, and I went ahead and unloosened this header while I was just working on it. I got the intake ready to come off. One of the bolts had oil on it. This back bolt, the second one up from where the distributor would be. So I really don't know what to expect, because that could be an issue if it runs down into the intake runner. So I'm fixing to pull this off here. I don't really know. I noticed that like the China walls didn't really have much gasket maker on, which I didn't see where they was leaking. I went ahead and left the carburetor on it, but that may come back to bite me. I was just trying to save time, which I know you don't want to turn it upside down or anything like that, but there we go. First visual look, nothing looks terrible. I don't guess. There's some dirty intake runners right there. Let me set this over here and look at it. Nothing looks too terribly bad. These are new cylinder heads. They're Flowtech 180cc. It was that back bolt right there that had the oil in the threads, which I know you're supposed to put sealer on them, but right off the bat, I'm not seeing anything that looks bad. The intake runners look really clean on it. So as clean as they look and as free from oil, that leads me to believe it was not a PVC valve issue, because it'd be pulling oil through the carburetor, through the back of the carburetor. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the heads off here, and then that way I can look at the valve seals and make sure the spring seats and the valve seals, I'm hoping that's my issue. I don't really know, but I am really not wanting to have to pull the engine out of this and do the rings, since it has such good compression, which that does not eliminate it being a ring issue. But since it has such good compression, there could be an oil ring problem. I'm not sure. I talked to the guy who built this engine. When the truck was sold, there was not an issue with it, but it only has 400 miles on it. It's a freshly rebuilt small block, 400 miles, built by a machine shop, bored 30, supposedly has the correct pistons in it and all of that. So I'm gonna get these heads off here, and that way we can look in the cylinders, see if we notice anything with the pistons, anything up there, see if we can clean off a piston and find a marking on it that indicates it is bored 30 thousandths, and then we can take the heads. I'm gonna take them to the machine shop, they can pull them apart, look at the valve seals, and make sure everything's good to go there. They are Flowtech heads. I've read they're known for having bad valve seals in them. I couldn't imagine ever a valve seal being bad and it causing it to burn oil on all 8 cylinders, but I guess that is possible. We'll find out more about it whenever we get the heads off. Okay, so I got both of the exhausts loose on each side. Got all these head bolts out. This head's ready to come off. That probably seemed about 45 seconds worth to y'all, but it was like 45 minutes in real life. I had some trouble getting to the bottom head bolts. I had to jack the header up. Luckily I got to them all. Before I put the head back on, if I do not have the engine out of the truck, which I'm hoping I'll pull this head off, find something wrong with the valve seals. In other words, oil will be running down the valve stem. I'm hoping that's where my oiling issue is coming from. If it is not, then I'm gonna have to pull the engine out of the truck, and then I can put the heads on when it's on the engine stand and won't have to worry about the headers being in the way. If the heads is the problem and we fix the heads and have to go back on, then I'm gonna have to probably take the exhaust header. They're like shorty block hugger headers. I don't know, super weird the way the exhaust is ran on this truck, but it's really hard to get to all the bolts at the bottom. Which, me being an LS guy, there's not nowhere near many head bolts as there is on these small blocks. So this feels like there's a dozen of them, more compared to the LS. And as usual, I got a whole just stream of antifreeze running down the shop floor. But that's to be expected. Okay. These are so awkward to deal with, but luckily they are not cast iron. Well, first initial look. Let's get you on here and see. It really does not look all that terrible. I do see 30 over on the pistons. So, it looks like it has really good cross hatching. That cylinder right here, I guess that would be cylinder number 4. It was the better looking one as far as the oil on the spark plug, but it had the lowest compression. So I don't really like these head gaskets, but it had the lowest compression. Come over here to the head. You can definitely see the oil deposits, especially there on the first 2 cylinders. These back 2 do not look quite as bad. I don't see nothing that just sticks out right away. I do see 30 over on the pistons, so someone did not lie there. Said they was flat tops. They are flat tops, but they do have 2 pretty hefty valve reliefs in them. They're Keith Black brand, I believe. Obviously gotta have the antifreeze running out. I'm going to work on getting the other head off so I can take them both to a local engine builder / machine shop, and he is going to take the valve springs off and go through and look at that. I'm hoping we're finding something wrong with the heads. That's the best bet for me, so then we can get that fixed, put the heads back on, and I do not have to pull the engine out of this truck. If I have to pull the engine out, as good as the cylinder walls look, and as good as the compression was, it's not looking like a ring issue, but like I said earlier, it still could be an oil ring. So that being said, I don't know if we can re-hone it. We'll have to measure the cylinder walls and make sure everything's square. With going behind somebody else's work, you don't know what you're getting into. So we don't know if the cylinder walls is square in it. We don't know if we'll have to bore it to the next size over. We don't know what we're getting into with there yet. But let's hope it's just a cylinder head issue on one of the head, or on both heads. They have a valve seal issue, and that's where oil's coming from. Okay, so this head is ready to be pulled. I'm not really expecting anything different from the other side. Which, if the heads are bad, you can't visually tell. You got to pull the springs off of them and pull them apart. This side wasn't as bad, and the exhaust is a little more flexible over here, so it really wasn't quite as bad as the other side. But this collector is also loose, and it had a major exhaust leak over here, so that kind of helps give me some wiggle room. But let's pull this head off and see what we got. Like I said, I'm not expecting anything too terribly bad. About like the other side, just oil and that sort of thing. The engine ran great. It didn't have any problems besides burning oil, so. Come on off there. Here we go. The head looks about the same. I wasn't really expecting anything different. None of it looks too bad. And honestly, the pistons are not as fouled up with oil like I thought. I figured they would be a whole lot worse based off the amount of oil that this thing was burning. I mean, you can definitely see the oil in the chambers and stuff like that, but it really looks just like carbon buildup, with it, which this engine has 400 miles on it, so 480 something miles, I do believe, according to the odometer, which this truck just got restored, and it's a new odometer and fresh engine. I don't really see anything. It does, one thing I have noticed, it looks awful wet around the intake valves. I don't know if you can see that. It looks awful wet around the intake valve. That could mean my theory is correct, and it's getting oil in, leaking through down the valve stem into the chamber. At first, I thought it could be an issue with this intake. It's a dual plane. I don't see any markings on it, which leads me to believe it is a Chinese intake. I have no clue, but it is a dual plane. I know that. Appears to be okay, but I figured it could be leaking through the intake gasket on the bottom and sucking oil up into the runners, because sometimes you'll get an intake and it won't be square, won't have the right gasket, and it'll suck oil from the lifter valley up into the cylinder. But that doesn't appear to be the case, as the intake valve or intake gasket did look pretty good. But the this side, I can see the cross hatching in the cylinders, and the pistons look the same and all that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get these heads to the machine shop. He's going to pull them apart for me. We're going to look at them, and I'm hoping I find an issue with these and not have to pull the engine out to look at the rings. We will see. I don't know if I'm going to make this 2 videos or just pick back up with this one after I get, it may be a couple days later. I'll have to see how things goes and when I can get back on the truck. Okay, so it's the next day here. Yesterday, y'all seen me take the heads off and get ready to take them to the machine shop to get the valve springs pulled off. I done that yesterday after I ended the video. The valve seals, the valve guides, all that looked great. We pulled some springs off, did not see any issues. Like I was thinking it could be a bad valve seal. So more or less, then that means I'm going to have to attack the short block. Well, I come back to the shop and I was thinking, I was like, I'm going to look at the bores more and pay a little bit more attention to that. And here's what I found. So what it appears to be is this engine is bored 30 over supposedly. It's got, the pistons say 30, they got 30 thousandths marking on the pistons. So they are 30 over pistons, but these pistons are very loose in this bore. I'll show you. They are very loose. I don't know if you can see that there. You can rock the whole piston inside the bore. And they're all that way. These are Keith Black pistons, and they are known for having tight piston to wall clearances. So this leads me to believe that this block is 40 over with 30 thousandths pistons in it. I know that sounds crazy, but it happens. Someone could have bought this block. The guy who built the block could have just bought the block and was told it was 30 thousandths, put 30 over pistons in it, and never looked back. But there's definitely an issue here, so now I'm going to have to pull the motor out, and we are going to measure the cylinders, hone them if we need to, bore them if we need to, buy the right pistons if we need to, whatever we got to do. So this is definitely going to be a two-part video. In the next video, you'll see me getting the engine out, and then you will see me going to the machine shop and figuring out what is exactly wrong with this short block, as the pistons are very loose in it, and what we need to buy to fix it. Thanks for watching. I hope you like, subscribe, and share. I hope to see you back in part 2 of this video.